Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, the weekly podcast of OurScoop.com, the authority on Temple athletics. I'm your host, OurScoop editor John DiCarlo. I'm flying solo this week. Kyle Gauss and Ryan Mack are off. We've got an impending Temple football verbal commitment to tease, and we have a lighter mailbag this week, but the majority of the podcast this week is going to be comprised of my conversation with Temple men's basketball forward Sir Issac Herron, the 6'10" transfer who chose the Owls out of the portal from Louisiana Tech. I want to remind you all that if you missed last week's podcast with Diane Richardson and you're a Temple women's basketball fan, you should definitely give it a listen. Diane went right up and down the entire roster with me and offered a lot of insight into the 6 newcomers, the 6 returning players, and how they went about building their roster. So I hope you'll enjoy that. As for this week's podcast, Kyle and I say this all the time. It's mid-July, and this is the time when hope springs eternal, if you want to use that old cliche. For Temple sports, you've got football coming up, and you have new basketball rosters to look at on both the men's side and the women's side. Some fans can get optimistic. Others will believe it when they see it. But I'll say this. I do think Adam Fisher and his staff have helped themselves in the front court between what they've added with Sir Issac Herron, Christian Beam, the 7'1" transfer center from Georgia State, and then the transfer forwards that they added, and Baboucarr Njie from UTSA, and Edwin Suarez from Weber State. Again, if you're an OurScoop subscriber, you've read my story on Edwin Suarez. Talked to him not long after he committed to Temple out of the portal, and then we have Baboucarr Njie on the pod a few weeks ago. And don't forget that they have one more roster spot available, and the sources we've spoken with have indicated to us that they're likely to try to find one more front court player even after welcoming Mo Keita back into the fold. So I say all that to say that in terms of what he brings as a player on the court and what he brings in terms of leadership and chemistry, I think they might have found something here with Sir Issac Herron. A couple of people I'd spoken with when he committed, who were even outside of Temple and Philly, remarked about how mature he is and how he really showed some flashes this past season at Louisiana Tech of getting back to where he was after recovering from a meniscus injury that kept him out 2 seasons ago. So at Louisiana Tech this past season, 27 games and 10 starts for Sir Issac Herron. He averaged 4.6 points and 2.4 rebounds per game. Again, he was coming off a meniscus injury that kept him out the duration of the previous season. In our interview here, you'll hear him talk about how he initially thought he was going in for arthroscopic surgery that would have meant a 6-week recovery. But when he came out of it, his doctor told him that they found more damage and that it was a full repair that kept him out for the whole year. But this past season, he had 5 double-figure scoring games, 18 points against a pretty good Sam Houston State team after he had a right hand injury that kept him out of all but one game at Oral Roberts during the 2022-23 season, and then the knee injury 2 years later. He has that full year under his belt from last season. He told me earlier today that he feels great. He's competing with Christian Beam to start this season. I'd be surprised if he's not seeing some important minutes either way. So beyond that, I think you'll very much hear in our conversation here a lot of that maturity and perspective I alluded to a minute ago. I had the chance to talk to him for a minute or two a few weeks ago when I was over at the facility for one of my other interviews, and I was kind of struck by how personable and down-to-earth he was. And then when I talked to him for this week's episode, he really dove deep into what has shaped him in his life. You'll hear him talk about what he learned from his family being displaced down in Houston by Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. They were essentially homeless for a few months. He talked about what he's learned from going through that, battling through a couple of the injuries that I mentioned, how he got his name and the significance of it, which is a cool and meaningful story in its own right. So again, the handful of people I've come in contact with have sometimes brought him up unprompted because of the impact he's had so far on the court and off the court from a leadership perspective. And that was kind of crystallized for me when I talked to him for this week's episode. Really enjoyed our conversation about basketball, life, music, and I'm excited to bring that to you guys here. So here's my interview with Temple big man Sir Issac Herron, and then I'll have more for you on the other side with a hint of football recruiting news, and then the mailbag where we'll talk a little bit more football and even some Temple baseball. Most important question, and I am probably going to be the 5 millionth person to ask you this, perhaps a top 5 name in college basketball. Tell me about just where your first name comes from. It's just really cool and really unique. Tell us about the origins of your name.
So my great-grandpa, my grandfather on my dad's side, he was a Vietnam vet, and from his upbringing, he always experienced certain racial backlashes with, just coming up around the era. And so he wanted it to be set in stone as kind of respect factor for me. He said that his name is actually going to be Sir. And he said that, and my mother honored it, So from that point on, we had Sir Issac, and it kind of just went from there. But that was how it originated. So my grandfather had that first name, and my grandmother had my middle name, and they put them together. So that was how it originated, though.
That's so cool. I mean, do people call you Sir? Do they call you Sir Issac? Do you have like a bunch of nicknames that come out of that? Or what do you prefer to be called?
Yeah, I would say the original is always the best go route for me. Like I said, I try to honor that name in itself. So whenever I meet someone, I say Sir Issac. And it's funny because when I go through the drive-thru, I don't say my full name. I'll just say Sir. And I kind of feel like they think that I'm messing with them when I say it. And it's no ego trip. It's actually my name. If anyone wants to fact check it, I got the ID on me. But, yeah, man, it's always something that I try to just honor. So, Sir Issac, but growing up, my AAU coach, he gave me the nickname Slim. So in the basketball world, I've gotten that name. That's stuck around. But if someone was to come up to me, I would typically say Sir Issac.
That's cool. So what led you here when it came time to enter the portal? And, if you've got an agent, you've got a bunch of people reaching out. Who reached out to you? Obviously, it wasn't the first time you hit the portal, but who reached out to you, and then what made Temple the right fit for you?
Yeah, so Coach Fish actually called me. I was at the gym, I was working out, and he called me. And one of the things he said that really stuck out to me was, I'm recruiting you as a person. Obviously, as a basketball player, but I want to recruit good people, is what he said. And, that really stuck with me because in the college climate that we're in today is very financially led. And, it's hard to get good people, in a good program, in a good system, and just have good people around you. And, they wanted that, I wanted that. I wanted to come in somewhere where it was just good people. So Coach Fish was actually one person that reached out, and that stuck out to me because he's obviously the head coach. That means a lot. It carries a lot of weight. And yeah, it was a couple weeks into the portal. Started to kind of get a little traction with, visits and things like that. And like I said, Coach Fish reached out. I set the visit up. We set it up. I came out here, and I fell in love with it, man. I fell in love with how they approached, the relationship. Even my first day out here, how they communicated with each other and how they just meshed naturally. It didn't seem like a facade because it was a recruit coming in. It was just, that's how they are, He was cracking jokes on Coach Bobby and all of them, and it was just a good experience, good vibe. And so that really drew me to them, and I'm glad I made that decision.
Who were some of the other schools that reached out, and what is that having gone through it a second time? Did you learn stuff from the first time around as opposed to this time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good majority of schools reached out. I think the biggest thing was you can only commit to one, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, you can have 1 million schools that reach out, and whatever price ranges they throw at you. And obviously, like I said, in today's climate with the NIL and things like that, you're going to get numbers that are super, super high, and you're going to get numbers that are whatever the case may be. I think the biggest thing for me was the fit. The fit is the biggest thing because it's all going to vanish at some point, right? But it's the legacy that you leave behind. It's the day-to-day. And like I said, that camaraderie that the coaches had shown on that first initial visit was something that I'm like, I like this. And it wasn't even about the financial aspect. It was just the people. And so that was what drew me to here. But to answer your question, there were many schools that reached out. from many different conferences. You have Conference USA, you have the Sun Belt Conference, many different schools, high major, low major, mid major, whatever the case may be. So I was grateful to see that response from so many college coaches and so many schools that still had interest. But like I said, at the end of the day, you can only commit to one.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I made the right decision.
I have to ask you this for consistency. I've asked the other guys. They've all talked about how when they came on their visit here, the coaches do like a deep dive into your numbers and say, here's where you're good, here's where you can improve, here's where we think we can help you incrementally. Did they do that with you? And if so, what did you think of that?
They did pull up the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It was a per 40,
mm-hmm.
and that's pretty much like if you were to play the whole 40 minutes, this is your stats for the game. And I thought it was cool that they did a deep dive and were so invested in what this could be and what you could develop into. So I think it was a cool thing that they took the time to get those numbers and calculations and everything. But yeah, man, I think it's cool to see the analytical aspect of the game in their eyes, and I think it was a good thing to see, because at the end of the day, you can go and play or hoop or whatever, but until you see, the numbers don't lie, you know, and that was something that they showed, you know, what are you good at, what are you best at, what do you need to work on? And so it was a multitude of things that they showed, and, you know, it was a good thing, you know.
When you first got to Oral Roberts, they initially listed you at 6'8", and now you're listed at 6'10". Did you actually incur a growth spurt when you got into college?
Yeah, stretching and yoga has been helpful, you know. They might have boosted, you know, a little bit, but no, I would most definitely say on court, the official height would be like 6'8" and some quarters, 6'9".
Mm-hmm.
But you know, basketball, you can have a guy who's 5'9", he'll be 6'2" on the roster. So, you know.
But I was talking to Jordan a few weeks ago. I said, "How tall are you?" He said, "I'm like 5'9", but they list me at 5'10".
Generous.
I'll take it. What was if you're willing to talk about it, what was the injury that you were dealing with at Oral Roberts that kept you out that season in 2024-25?
Yeah, so there were actually two major injuries, and that was how I was granted my redshirt years. Mm-hmm. So the first injury was a spiral fracture in my third metatarsal. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much
in your right hand.
Your
there?
right hand ring finger. And that's your middle finger. Mm-hmm. And I had a spiral fracture in that area of my hand, and I'm right hand dominant.
Right.
So you can see the problem with that. Yeah. I wish it was left. I probably would have played on it.
Yeah.
But God does everything for a reason, man.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first injury that I had, that hand injury, and that set me out. I redshirted.
Was that the one in 2022-23?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that was the injury. And sure enough, we ended up going to March Madness and playing in that. So I was injured up until probably January, and that was when I started to work my way back in. And, you know, I was eager to get back because it was such a good team, and I just wanted to compete on a day-to-day basis with those guys. But that was the first injury that I had at Oral Roberts. The second injury was my senior year. Last year I was there. I had a meniscus tear. Mm-hmm. It was a tricky deal because going into that year, as basketball players, we experience knee injuries or aches and pains all the time, so you can't differentiate the two. As the summer progressed, it started to feel worse and worse, and so I got it checked out, and I found out it was a tear. We ended up scheduling the surgery and everything like that. When I went under for the surgery, the doctor had told me that it was going to be a 6-week recovery process. But I went under, and he seen something that was worse than expected. So he took his knowledge and experience, and he said, I want to preserve his knee as much as possible. So he ended up doing a actual repair. So I was supposed to go in for scoping, clean out the meniscus, but I was under, and he ended up doing a repair. And if you don't know, the repair takes it from a typical scoping where it's a 4-week recovery process to 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So you can see that I was devastated waking up and finding out that you're going to be out for the whole year. And I just had to buckle down and mentally prepare for the year that I was going to have and the recovery process that I needed to attack to get back to me and, playing. It was a grind, but like I said earlier, I feel like God does everything for a reason. And hindsight 2020, I'm grateful that I went through those things, those trials, because it made me stronger. Not even physically, but mentally, just the day-to-day battles that you have to go through, to amount to where you're trying to get to. But yeah, it was all for a good cause at the end of it.
Last year, 4.6 points, 2.4 rebounds per game, and then you had 5 double-figure games. You had that really good game against that was a pretty good Sam Houston team. Tell me about last season where you think your game grew, and then as you were navigating just being back on the court after an injury. Like, were you, I know everybody probably asked this, did you feel it 100% last year, or is there still some rust that you got to knock off?
Yeah, last year most definitely was a year where I was just getting my bearings right, and coming into my own. I feel like it was a year where I was coming off of injury, and being out for a year is a lot of time in basketball. So just to get my feet back under me, those coaches were great at helping along the way and pushing me mentally, physically, to get to those points, to be the best version that I need to be for myself and for that team. So yeah, it was most definitely a mixture of finding myself and knocking a bit of rust off. But towards the end of the year, I feel like I started to find a rhythm in that sense. So.
Simple question: How do you feel now? Do you feel just like as good as new after having that year of knocking some rust off and playing some pretty decent basketball?
I feel great. I feel great. I feel strong as an ox. I feel like myself again. My jumping ability is something that I pride myself on as a player, being athletic, being quicker for my position. And I feel like I'm getting back to that. And, that's all from the help of Coach Ben, our strength coach. The coaches here understanding that we're going to push you, but at the same time, it's day one. So let's progress, because we would rather you be your best in March than right now in June and July. So we're going to take the time to develop and, ease our way into it. And that's been helping a ton. Being an older guy, taking care of my body has been a top priority. So taking care of those things has been a help, and it shows on the court for me.
Yeah. You guys went 20-14 last year. You're also 9th best team defensively in the country in terms of points allowed, which, kind of flies under the radar if people aren't following your team closely. What went into the defensive success that you guys had?
Our teammates had this saying, we crossed our fingers and we said love. And if you know anything about a team, you know that love can carry a long way. And when you have love for your teammates and love for the jersey that you put on, that carries. Not only does it carry, you hear the saying that defense travels. And we had a hard hat mentality everywhere we went. And it wasn't the best year. It wasn't the greatest three-point shooting year. It wasn't anything like that. But if we could pinpoint something that we can hang our hats on, and that was defense for us, we'll take care of the rest and we'll figure it out. And so that was our theme throughout the year, getting our rhythm. But the main thing was defense, and it showed, obviously limiting teams to certain points per game. But the ultimate thing that came down to was just love for one another and having one another's back, and it showed, not only on court but in the numbers too.
Yeah. How much do you talk to the guys about that here? Because now, guys, they sort of joke around, but it's true. It's almost like a 10-month commitment now, and transferring is not new, the portal's not new. But when you guys are coming from different areas, look, everybody knows, you got to defend. You got to score points. We all know the basic stuff. But when you've had something that was successful, your previous stop, do you ever talk to guys and be like, hey, man, I know it sounds simple, but the closer we were, the better we bought in on defense, because some teams just can't do it. Like, do you ever share like what worked at Louisiana Tech and say, hey, when I was there, we worked? Are guys at that point now where they're sharing like, hey, I took this from USC, or I taken this from this school? Like, do you share with them like that success that became contagious for you guys? You guys have those types of conversations?
I typically don't bring it up in that way, but it's more so a action type of thing. And what I mean by that is we'll be in practice, and sometimes you'll have guys who are in their comfort zone. But to understand winning is to understand that you have to be uncomfortable majority of the time. And so me understanding that, I try to just get that side of the guys, if they're not accustomed to it. So it'll be quiet in gym, and something as simple as just like, hey, talk up. I know you're talking a little bit, but you have to yell because it's quiet now in the practice gym, but soon enough we're going to be in an arena full of fans and it's going to be loud. Understanding those little things, and it transfers onto the court, but I wouldn't say it was something that, hey, this is what we did here. It's more so just, this is what worked, and this is what I know has been proven to work, and we should lean towards this way as opposed to the other way.
Yeah. Well, it might sound like a simple question, but how do you think Adam wants to utilize you here, and what do you think they can get out of you here this season?
I think my physicality is the main thing that was attractive as far as being a recruit for Temple. I think that rebounding the ball and just overall the style of play that Coach Fish has with the program. I think that playing on the perimeter, playing inside, being able to do multiple things throughout the game, defend the perimeter, defend inside. So ultimately, man, just being a Swiss Army knife, doing it all.
It's been a few weeks now working out with these guys. What are your impressions so far? Anything that jumps out at you? Yeah,
I love the guys' competitive spirit. No one loves to lose, and I think that's a good thing. I think that we also know how to hone in or key in on that competitive spirit. So we'll be competitive on the court, and it'll be very competitive. No one's trying to lose. Everyone wants to win. But after we step off the court, it's like a brotherhood. And it's not a facade, and it's not fake, because we're not coming out right now saying that we're just the closest team. And that's the reality of it. Like, we do a ton of team bonding. We're with each other every day. But at the end of the day, you have to go way longer than a couple weeks to truly know someone. Yeah. And so we understand that. We're understanding that it's a gelling process, but at the same time, it's like speed dating. Yeah, so, you try to get that relationship and build it quick so that you can move on. And so it's the same thing here. We're just trying to mesh, and everyone's trying to gel, but a great group of guys. And I credit Coach Fish to that, because like I said, when he calls, he says, I want to recruit good people. And when you have good people with good people, the outcome is a good thing. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing for our team, is we have a good group of guys. So that meshing that I spoke about isn't too hard.
I want to ask you to put the coach's hat on here, because in the front court, I think you guys have some options. I want to ask you about Christian Beam first. I imagine, I can't see workouts here, but what's it like going up against him? Or are there times where you guys are both on the floor at the same time? And what do you see from him, and what does he bring out in your game?
I call Beam Young Dirk. Young Dirk.
It's quite a compliment.
I think Beam has a very high ceiling, just because for a big guy, Beam's a legit 7'1". He can move his feet well. They aren't cement blocks like you see typical bigs. It was funny, one day in practice we were doing a coverage that we have. It's pretty much you jump out on the ball screen, and I was just looking at how he moves, how he runs and things like that. And I worked out with Beam when I first got up here, and you know, we were working out, but it's different when you see someone in live action. And the big fella can move, man.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll add another a huge piece of just depth to our team, and it's all for the greater good of us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you could take all the skill sets and put them to one and make them coexist with each other, I think that's the ultimate goal of a team, is to take everyone's attributes and combine them and, you know, make them as strong as possible.
Yeah.
And Beam shows that, man. He can do it all, you know, rebounds well, running the floor well, and it's very athletic, you know, for his size, you know. So good player, and just overall great person, man.
Yeah.
You know, good dude.
How about Baboucarr, Njie? I told him when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, I got to see him twice last season, once in person with them playing in conference here, and I remember watching him thinking, you know, from my removed point of view, I'm like, he's probably not ended up at UTSA next year. Somebody's going to get him in the portal. Whoever gets him is going to be lucky. Then he pops here. I thought, man, that's a nice fit for these guys. Tell me about what you've seen from him.
Yeah. Baboucarr is, like I said, with that Swiss Army knife, he could do it all, you know. But Baboucarr is a hard-head guy. You know, he comes in and work. Whatever you need him to do, he's going to do it. And just compete. That's the ultimate thing that you can ask for. And Baboucarr is a everyday guy, man. He comes in and does his job. You know, we joke around all the time, but when it's time to work, it's work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's one thing I can appreciate about him. Baboucarr keeps things fun, you know, lighthearted. But when it is time to compete, he shows up every day.
Mm-hmm. How about Edwin Suarez? And again, got the chance to talk to him. He's got a great story. Comes here from Puerto Rico, barely learned, you know, knew the language at the time. Goes JUCO, works his way up, and it kind of, you know, a guy like Baboucarr, like a little bit of a smaller, big, but the versatility to guard almost every position on the floor. What have you seen from him?
Right. Ed is, man, the way Ed plays is very selfless. If Ed has a layup and Ed sees you on the block or whatever, Ed's going to fake the layup and throw the ball to you. And as hoopers, we have this thing where it's like, show me how you play and I'll tell you the type of person you are. And it just speaks volumes to his character, because when you look at how he plays on the court and then you see how he carries himself off the court, you say that's a selfless guy. And he's willing to give up something that he wants, or, you know, something that he has going on to give to others. And I think that's just the type of person he is from what I've experienced. Real funny guy, real good dude, man. But like I said, when it's time to work, Ed is going to work, you know. A dog on defense, and can rebound the ball at a high rate and shoot it good too, you know. So he can do it all, man.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to go up the whole roster, but just some of the guards, who's been tough to stay in front of? Who's impressed you?
Man, all of them. We have very good guard play. It's not one guy who I would single out, and it's like, you know, it's not that type of thing. Like I said, man, Coach Fish and the coaching staff have done a very good job at recruiting guys who they know can come in and do the job. And ultimately, as a bigger guy, as a forward or center, that is a dream, you know, guys who can do what they need to do, but also facilitate. Like I said with Ed, like, guy who's going to be unselfish and pass the ball, you know, and things like that, or a guard who penetrates the lane and throws a lob. Like, we have those type of guys. But not only that, they can step out and they can, you know, get to their spots and raise up and shoot and, you know, score at an efficient rate. And they're not just shot takers, they're shot makers, you know. And I think that's a huge piece and a huge asset that we have this year.
What has it been like to just, you've touched on some of this already, just spending time with these guys? You know, you went to you have your Phillies hat on, you went to the Phillies game, went down to the shore, went to the beach, you guys have gone to Liberty Grounds. I know Adam's been, like you said, he's been very intentional about getting you guys together off the court. Who were some of the personalities, and what's it like just getting to know? Again, you've been through this before, and you probably know what works and what doesn't work. Tell me about just some of the personalities on this team and some of the fun stuff that you guys have been able to do and what you've gotten out of that.
Man, we have a very youthful group.
Do you feel like the older guy?
For sure.
I mean, you are technically one of the vets, but like, they make you feel older.
Man, but it's not a feeling of being casted out.
Right.
You know, they're very welcoming. But it's more so just like you see different personalities and you understand that, like, yeah, I'm the older guy. You know what I mean? And it's nothing wrong with that, man. I embrace it every day. And I think it's such a cool thing to have so many personalities from different various backgrounds in different regions and different areas come all in one and say, we're going to make a team. And at the end of that team, it's a brotherhood, hopefully, you know what I mean? And having guys that are that close-knit to where you have those relationships years later. And I think Coach Fish has cultivated that environment for us so that we may be able to build those bonds and connections to strengthen those throughout the year. But in the beginning of the year, Coach Fish even said, like, hey, I wouldn't expect you guys to be the best of friends or brothers the first couple of days. That's just not realistic, and it's fake. So the benefit of it has been the time that we've been giving to mesh and to gel with each other. I think that when you let it happen organically, good things come from it. You know, it can't be forced. It can't be, I have to be cool with this guy just because he's my teammate. It's like, no, I want to be cool with this guy because he's a cool person.
Right.
And he's my teammate, so that helps.
Yeah.
I think when you combine those two, great things happen because just like I said with the Louisiana Tech team, it was based off love, and we had a genuine love for one another. And, you know, one guy wanted to see the other succeed just as much as, you know, it was vice versa. And when you have a team like that, man, in this day and age, you can do whatever. You know, you can amount to anything because that's the core of it. You know, you can have a very talented team and very talented individuals, but at the end of the day, if they're just talented individuals and not a team, then you won't really get too far.
Yeah, you said especially today. When did you start playing growing up? If you like, what's your earliest memory of getting into basketball?
Man, I remember. So funny thing about my upbringing and my journey to basketball, I always played like going to the park or outside on my hoop. But I started to play organized basketball AAU when I got to my 9th grade summer. That was when one of my former teammates, his dad had introduced me to, he's pretty much like family now. His name is Herb Baker. And so my former teammate's dad said, show up to this place. They're having tryouts for the team. So I showed up, 15 years old, about 6'6" at the time, 6'5", 6'6". And once I showed up, when I shook Coach Herb's hand, he was like, how old are you? Obviously, you can see my stature and how tall I was. But, man, once he seen that I was so young and so malleable to form and just to develop into, you know, such a player, he was like, man, you and me, you know. And so from that day on, we were stuck like glue. And, you know, I was forever grateful for that connection because we're still tight now. It's like family. So that was the main memories that I have growing up. But I've always played, man. I've always loved basketball and have been a basketball fanatic, you know, from metal chains on the driveway, gold to, you know, AAU and traveling. It was all the love for it. But I started playing officially, you could say, 9th grade summer with AAU.
You grown up in Texas your whole life?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Born and raised in Houston, Texas.
Now, you had some good schools recruiting you. I think like Houston was recruiting you, Georgia was recruiting you. What was your recruitment like before you picked Oral Roberts?
Yeah, it was, so recruitment was pre-COVID. And then once it started to ramp up, that's when COVID hit.
Yeah.
So those schools had showed interest and a couple have, you know, offered. But around that time, I wasn't able to take any visits.
Yeah.
So it was mainly just like who's going to keep up and who's going to keep a rapport so that I can, you know, at the time just feel comfortable making the decision. And Oral Roberts did a great job in recruiting me. I felt the most comfortable with the coaching staff going into it. At the time, Coach Russell Freeman had recruited me there, and it was a great experience, man. I was grateful to just have the opportunity to play at the next level and, you know, receive a full ride scholarship to go to school for free. You know, that was big for me. And so they granted me that opportunity, and I'm grateful for it, man.
Yeah. Who were some of the players you watched, like, growing up, and who are some of the players that you continue to watch now to try to model your game after? I know a lot of great players say, I'm going to take a little bit from this guy, that guy. What do you remember from watching people growing up and even now?
I love watching LeBron and how tenacious he was and how athletic he played.
Any chance you can get him here to the Sixers?
Man, that would be a dream. That would be a dream. And it kills me that I never went to a LeBron game, man. So hopefully he comes out here and, you know, show up to a couple of games. But yeah, man, I would always watch LeBron. Obviously KD, Kevin Durant. Watch Michael Beasley, Bam Adebayo, Kevin Garnett, Dirk, Kyrie. Just a sponge with the game, man. Just watching so many different players and taking bits and pieces from their game and implementing it in mine. You know.
What do you do, like, I like to ask guys too, again, like, you get questions like this all the time from reporters and you've been covered your whole life. What's something that you enjoy talking about off the court that you don't get asked about all the time that you would want people to know about you?
Man, I'm starting to be a huge golf guy.
Oh, wow.
Love golf. I really want to go out to a course very soon. I've been talking to one of the guys on the team, Olin. You know, he's into golf too. So hopefully I'll get my set of clubs and, you know, we'll go out there. But I've really been into golf, man, and just, you know, my ideal leisure day would just be by some water. And, you know, when we went to the beach, that was ideal for me. But, yeah, man, I love golf. I love music, you know. So those are my top things that I would say you can talk to me about anything, you know.
You have like a playlist before games when you're warming up or before you practice, or?
I most definitely fluctuate with the playlist. Like, I'm a music lover, so I have different pockets of jazz that I listen to, from Ethiopian jazz, all types, to Japanese.
So where does that come from? That's really cool. How'd you get interested in Ethiopian jazz and Japanese music stuff? That's really cool.
TikTok, man. TikTok has introduced me to different various sounds and different artists and things like that. Shout out to TikTok for just giving small artists a platform to express their music and to put it on the platform, man. But yeah, I came across many different songs from TikTok, and I just would add them to the playlist. But going back to your question with the games, man, I listen to things depending on how I feel. I try to be fairly consistent with what I do listen to get into that routine for the game. But it'll be jazz sometimes, it'll be R&B sometimes. Like, I don't like playing too erratic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to be very calm. And so I'll turn on jazz if I feel like I'm too antsy or I'm too, you know, because I need to be at a certain point to operate. But if I feel like I need to wake up, or it's, you know, the tail end of the season and you've been through many things, you got your routine, but you need something to amp you up, I listen to a little rap. So it depends, you know.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, this is a Philadelphia example. Jalen Hurts talked about how he listens to Anita Baker to stay calm, and people are like, wow, you're young to be listening to Anita Baker, but like, I get it.
He knows the ball, man.
Yeah.
He knows the ball.
Yeah.
You got to have different pockets of music genres to tap into, man. And for me, being a music lover is fairly easy.
You know? Was that something you got from like your family growing up, or just like beyond like social media? Was that something like where was your family just playing that in the house? Because again, it sounds like you just have a very wide, varied, good perspective on music.
Yeah, I would say growing up, my mom and my dad, they played a lot of rock, I would say. So, you know, you would have like Coldplay or, you know,
Now you're talking about my generation.
Floyd, you know what I mean, or Nirvana,
Yeah.
or you know, It Smells Like Teen Spirit, or you know, just different things like that, man. And so they've introduced me to that side. So we've always been hip to just music and just love good music, good quality music. But I took it upon myself to just dive into what I was interested in, and you know, I started to listen to like R&B and different artists, and just along the way, being in basketball, you'll meet teammates who have the same interests, and you just, hey, what you have on your playlist, and you know, we'll exchange. So that would be how I came into a vast range of that genre that I have.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this to you. You seem very down to earth, very mature. I know Adam said that. Does that come from your parents, just your friends? Because, again, not everybody's like that. Everybody's different. Like you said, it takes all sorts of different personalities to make the world go round. But, like, you seem very settled and very grounded. Where does that come from?
Man, I appreciate that. I would say most definitely from just experiences growing up. I'm grateful to not look like what I've been through, and that's a blessing. So just taking all those things and just it's molded me into who I am now. You know, whether it be great or whether it be traumatic, it was all to make me the man that I am now. And, you know, it's cool to hear people say that, you know, because I am that type of way. I talk to anyone. I say hello to everyone. And I'm genuinely just that type of person that talk to anyone about anything. So.
It's a lot of just the injuries you're talking about, just the traumatic stuff, just like that. And
Man,
well, anything you're willing to share. I don't want to pry too much.
No, it's most definitely an open book. Like I said, growing up, man, having to be a certain type of way to see a better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And those things may have you develop into the type of person where you have to be a certain type of way. So you may be in environments where, you know, it's best to just be level-headed, you know, and not make any rash decisions. But also other times where you had to. So I'll give you one example, right?
Sure.
So this was something that turned tragedy into triumph.
Right.
Hurricane Harvey hit, I believe it was the summer or the fall of 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
We were misplaced from Hurricane Harvey.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Nah, it's okay, man. Like I said, I'm here today, you know, standing before you, able to give you the story. So God is good, but I digress, man. So Hurricane Harvey happened, and we were misplaced, and we were homeless for about 3-4 months. And so I was blessed to have loving family members who allowed me to stay at their homes, and I'm forever grateful for them, man. But like I said, if you don't have a home, you're homeless.
Yeah.
You know, it's not home. So we were going through that, just being misplaced. My mom was working at the time. She was at Greenway, you know, and that was right up the street from Lamar, which I attended for the 3 years in high school. And that was when I started to get really into the basketball scene. So I think it all was a work for the greater good, man. But at that time, I couldn't be caught up on certain things that other kids could afford or they had the luxury of having at the time.
Yeah.
So I naturally had to be down to earth, you know. If I'm wearing donated clothes or shoes that are donated and they may not be the most pop, you know, or most hip shoe or whatever the case may be, I had to focus on my personality and the type of person I was. I truly believe you can't judge a book by its cover, and you should really dive deep into who that person is, because everything that glitters isn't gold, you know. And I just take that everywhere I go, man. And like I said, turning something that has been so traumatic and just growing up and going through different things. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I just had it the hardest. Like, my parents did a very good job of allowing me to grow up and not feel it as much, but they let me know, like, hey, this is reality over here.
No, that's perfect sense, yeah.
So I always grew up aware, you know. It wasn't anything under the sun that my parents didn't tell me because I was too young, you know.
I think that's the way to do it, man.
Most definitely, man.
Yep.
And that has all just allowed me to be the person I am because they let me know, like, hey, as good as it is, you still have real world things going on. Mm-hmm. So just be aware of it, you know.
Yeah. What about just being in Philly? What do you like about it so far?
I'm loving the food out here, man.
Yeah.
I'm a huge foodie. I love food, and I love the fact that Philadelphia has a wide range of options that you can choose from. And not only a wide range, it's good. Mm-hmm. You know, it's fresh, it's hot, it's good quality, it tastes good. So I'm appreciative for that coming from Houston, where that's like a foodie central, you know what I mean? Like, that's a spot where it has so many food spots. But coming out here, I think the part that stuck out to me the most was, so when I came on my visit, right, they put me in a hotel. It was like this Hilton, and it was right off the pier.
Yeah.
And someone like me, like I said earlier, I love the water. Mm-hmm. And so you have someone who you can go walk to the pier or just drive to the pier or what have you anytime you want. That was a huge pro for me. So anywhere where I'm close to water, man, and there's food and there's good people, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Any favorite restaurants? So, I mean, I know you guys have been pretty busy and you try to stick to a regimen, but have you ventured out at all in different parts of the city and eaten anywhere?
Man, I could not tell you a restaurant off the top of my head, but the food trucks out here have been wonderful.
Yeah.
They have been wonderful, from halal to tacos to whatever you want, they have it. So I've been dipping and dabbling in a couple of little spots, but I most definitely want to try a couple of the restaurants soon, you know.
What are the final question for you, and I really appreciate your time. What do the trainers tell you about that? I mean, you're young, you can get away with it, you're working out, but like, do they tell you for your diet, okay, you got your training table stuff, we're going to eat after practice, they feed you all here, but like, in terms of what you want to do as a player, do they tell you, okay, you can eat this, but stay away from this? What's that like as a college basketball player?
Man, you heard how I said I'm a foodie earlier.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that I try to just be mindful of, you know, try not to eat too much grease or too much fatty, you know, foods and stuff like that.
We do have a lot of that here in Philadelphia.
A lot of it, man. So I try to just, anything you do, you don't want to do it overly excessive. You know, you want to do it in moderation. So I try to keep that same mindset. But for me, if I feel good, the coaches, they're all for it. You know, they try to just ask, like, how do you feel? How's your body feeling? And if it's something that I'm putting in my body, I'll be the first to say, like, hey, I should probably stop this, you know. But they're not strict with the dieting and things like that. I would say the main thing is just to remain consistent with my weight and you know, my appearance and things like that. But they're not as strict as you know, it may seem.
Again, a big thank you to Sir Issac Herron for his time over at the facility for this week's podcast. I hope you all enjoyed that. As we mentioned before, if you want to get to know so many of the new players on this roster, we're going to be the best source for you. I spoke with Des White, Dallas Dillard, Edwin Suarez not long after those guys committed. And then once they got to campus, I spoke with players like Christian Beam, Jordan Marsh, Baboucarr, Njie, Deuce Drake, and now Sir Issac Herron. And we'll keep going with as many interviews as we can get you to help bring you more perspective on this roster. I promised that I'd tease a little bit of Temple football recruiting news. If you've been following along, Casey Keeler's Temple football program is at 12 verbal commitments from the 2027 class. They've had 3 players flip to other programs. We've talked about that in past episodes. But they're about to get another player. If you're listening to this on Friday morning or Friday afternoon, you might want to keep your eyes and ears peeled either on Friday or Saturday. They're about to get another commit. So we'll have that story for you at AlScoop once it breaks. Want to remind you all again that even if you subscribe to The Scoop here, our weekly podcast, the one that you're listening to right now, of course, you need to subscribe to AlScoop.com. When we get one-on-one interviews with recruits, coaches, or athletes, past and present at Temple, we're more often going to make them available only to our subscribers, and we will with this next recruiting story do the same thing. Kyle Gauss and our staff will always drop the most dependable and reliable recruiting tidbits for you on their football and basketball message boards. So if you sign up now, you get your first 5 days for $1, then 50% off your first year. That's an offer you don't want to miss. And as I mentioned last week, we're going to have 11 straight days of Temple football position previews that will take you into that first day of preseason camp coverage on August 5th. So you'll have that to look forward to starting on July 25th, which is coming up early in less than 2 weeks now. So preseason camp is right around the corner, and we're definitely going to have you covered. Speaking of Temple football, let's hop into the mailbag here with 2 questions from Sunny Al, one of our loyal subscribers. Sunny Al is a screen name on our football board. Question number 1 from Sunny Al. Take your best guess. Will Sekou Kroma play for Temple this fall? So, most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Sekou Kroma, the former Temple defensive tackle who had 3 sacks this past season. He was a single-digit player, but he battled shoulder injuries, and now he's seeking a 5th year of eligibility from the NCAA and went to New Jersey State Court to file a complaint against the NCAA, looking for that 5th and final season of eligibility. Played at a junior college before he got to Temple. A lot of players are doing this now in response to the new 5-for-5 rule that's saying players have 5 years to play 5 seasons, but the NCAA said it's not retroactive right now to players who exhausted their eligibility this past season. So he's looking for a temporary restraining order to keep the NCAA from enforcing that eligibility rule. So you can go online and read the complaint. You do not have to be a lawyer to read the complaint. The complaint says that there is a hearing coming up July 21st. The complaint says that Temple filed a medical waiver on Sekou Kroma's behalf back in early May, but didn't hear back. Having covered Sekou, I like him a lot and I wish him the best, but I'm also a reporter and I'm not a lawyer, so it would be a bit of a fool's errand to try to predict what's going to happen here. I don't get the impression that the Temple football program is banking on him getting another year. Again, that's not an official legal statement on my part. That's my best educated guess coming from a sports writer, not a lawyer, but I do wish him the best either way. So we'll see what happens there, Sunny Al. Question number 2. The MLB draft just occurred, and it made me think, do you all have any memories of Temple's baseball program? They ended the program the year before I enrolled at Temple, so I never experienced it. So yes, the Temple baseball program was part of the cuts, the Temple Athletics cuts in 2014. I can't say, to answer your question, I can't say I have a lot of vivid memories of it. There was the tradition of Skip Wilson. At one point, of course, they were very successful, but that was before my time. Temple reached the College World Series in 1972 and 1977. Guys like Joe Kerrigan, Jeff Manto, the late John Marzano, Bobby Higginson played for Skip. When I was a student at Temple and working at the Temple News from 1996 to 98, I didn't have the Temple baseball beat. And the thing that was tough was that the team was playing, as most of you know, up at Ambler, so you had to get on a shuttle to go up there, and that hurt the team from a fan and visibility perspective. Not to mention that back then, in the late 90s, before things really kind of blew up with like residential expansion in the early 2000s, Temple was still really very much a commuter school back then. So this isn't like it was never an SEC program. It's not like what you see down south. I looked this up today. I wouldn't have been able to give you this right off the top of my head. Temple was 62, 82, and 2 in those 3 seasons that I was here on campus working at the Temple News, and 28 and 31 in the Atlantic 10. What sticks out to me, Sunny Al, and I don't know what this does for you in terms of any sort of vivid memories, I'll share this. When Skip retired and he stepped down after the 2005 season, Temple brought in a guy named Rob Valley to replace him. The Northeast region of the country, as I just said, is never going to be a college baseball hotbed like what you've seen down south with Oklahoma, LSU, North Carolina, Tennessee, Miami, programs like that. But I do remember thinking at the time, okay, this hire makes some sense. Rob had been the coach at Gloucester County College from 2000 to 2005, and Gloucester County College had just won the Division III Junior College National Championship, I believe. Having covered South Jersey high school baseball down at the Daily Journal for 4 years after college, there's so many good ball players down there. And this was even pre-Mike Trout and Buddy Kennedy and guys like that. But Rob was really great at finding the guys who were a little shy about leaving home to go play D1 ball, but were still really good. And so some of them would opt to go the junior college route, even if they were qualified to play D1 ball. And realistically, Temple wasn't going to pluck a top assistant from a place like Miami or one of those other top programs I just mentioned and get him to come to Philly. So I thought hiring Rob made a lot of sense at the time. Again, Went back and looked this up too, because again, I never would have been able to rattle this off the dome. But Temple went 112 and 206 in Rob Valley's 6 seasons. But they did have that 2008 season where Temple won 27 and 29. They set a program record for the most A10 wins with 16. That was their first A10 tournament appearance in 6 years. So all things considered, when you look at the resources, who they could recruit, how hard it was to keep good players home, that was a small slice of success that they had there and a bright spot. You mentioned the MLB draft. Obviously, a big all-star storyline, it was all over the place, was Kevin McGonigal coming home to play in the all-star game for the Tigers. He's a Delco guy, played at Bonner and Prendy, grew up in Alden, just outside of Springfield. He was a first-round pick in 2023, was committed to play at Auburn, but he went right into the Tiger system and ascended quickly. Temple was never, even if Temple started a program today, they were never going to get a player like that, and they were just never going to get a real strong foothold in the Northeast. But obviously a real tough time for the program, for all those programs that got cut, and my heart goes out to those guys. And obviously now Temple has had a pretty good club baseball program since then, but I'm kind of just emptying the tank here for you in terms of Temple baseball memories. One final thing, I'll say this. I was thinking of this when I saw your question. If we're on the topic of Temple baseball, I do want to shout out a longtime Al Scoop subscriber, John Coyle. John played at Temple from 2004 to 2008, has since gone on to become a really successful lawyer who's impacted a lot of lives in a positive way. He's a good man, and I just wanted to give him a shout out as a former Temple player who's gone on to just do really great things in his career. So it's probably the most Temple baseball talk we've had in quite some time here on The Scoop, but we appreciate the mailbag questions as always, Sonny Al. That's going to do it for this week. Again, keep your eyes peeled for more football recruiting scoop at alscoop.com. A big thank you once again to Sir Issac Herron for spending some time with us on this week's podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.